Good morning, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day today. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the Primary Arms SLX MD25 G2, both the 2MOA dot version, which you currently see here, and their ACSS CQB reticle. But before we get into the video, if you want to help me out personally, you can, of course, like, share, and subscribe, as that is all free and does help me out quite a bit. On top of that, there's Subscribe Star, which is basically just a pro to a Patreon. I need to post more on there. And there's also my website, which has a few things left in stock. Now, with all of that out of the way, full disclosure on Primary Arms optics, as these were sent out to me by Primary Arms. I did not pay for them whatsoever. I didn't ask for these optics. They kind of just showed up along with some other stuff, but we are going to be reviewing them. There is a long-term relationship there. On top of that, I'm also a dealer for them, so if I buy products from them, I get them at a reduced price, and I also have spent thousands and thousands of dollars at Primary Arms wholesale. So there is a relationship there, so just keep that in mind going forward. Now, getting into the boring specifications on the MD25 Gen 2, it's going to be very similar to what you got in the original version with some updated features. So the body itself is, of course, a aluminum body. I believe it's 6061 T6 aluminum, very standard there, nothing special. It is, of course, hard coat anodized. The weight comes in at 6.9 ounces with the standard mount included. Now, very importantly, it does come with a lot of different mounting options in the box. I believe you have a low mount, a absolute, so a 141, and then you have a lower 1/3 riser plate included as well. Now, very importantly, it is standard T1, T2 footprint, so you can put on whatever sort of mount that you want. Fortunately, the included mount is actually pretty decent, and again, does come with multiple height options. Now, as you probably already guessed, but this is the MD25. It does have a 25mm objective lens, which is going to be substantially larger in terms of surface area and see-through capabilities than like a micro 20mm red dot will be. It's not a huge red dot by any means, but it is going to be a little bit bigger, which some people do like. It's going to be one of the selling points if you like larger windowed red dots. This does a good job of having a larger window. It's not necessarily a performance issue, it's more of a preference issue for most people. They like to see a little bit more through the glass. In theory, you could get a little bit better light collecting, light transmitting ability through the optic with that bigger window, so it could help you a little bit in low light or in night vision scenarios, though that's not something I have the ability to test. Now, getting into controls of the optic, on the left hand side of the optic body you have your rotary dial, which has settings 0 to 11. Now, you also have two night vision settings. The first two settings are night vision settings, and then after that, they're all basically daytime. Now, this is powered by a single 2032 battery. The battery tray rotary dial on the side is pretty bulky, and it does occlude some of your vision. So when you're behind the optic, it's a little bit bigger in general with that 25mm window, and it kind of has a lot more stuff around it, but we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. Now, in terms of brightness, usually when I'm outdoors, I was really only using setting 9, I think at the most. Maybe when I was using it on the GoPro, setting 10, just so you guys could see it a little bit better. But to the naked eye, 9, 8, somewhere in that range for normal situations is going to be perfectly fine. Now, very nicely on the Gen 2, the main updated feature is going to be that these come standard with AutoLive technology, meaning that they will automatically turn off when they don't sense motion for, I believe, 15 minutes, and then as soon as they do sense motion, they will automatically turn back on at whatever brightness setting you have selected. Now, that is very important for increasing your battery life. Now, the 2MOA dot version that you see here, that is rated for, I believe, 20 to 50,000 hours, though again, that's usually rated at either the lowest or like a medium setting. At a more usable setting, you're probably getting somewhere between 10 and 15,000 hours of battery life. And on the ACSS version, which of course has a much more complex version, which we did test this one as well, this one here, I think, is only rated for like 10,000 hours on a medium brightness setting. So again, think in a real world use case of probably like 5,000 hours of battery life, though that is combined with auto on, auto off. So you should still be getting years of battery life with the optic, depending on how much you're actually using it. That was one of the biggest complaints with the original generation, was that they did not have AutoLive technology. So especially with the ACSS version, if you leave it on like setting 10 or 11 and it's burning out every couple months, well, that feels really bad compared to other red dots that don't have that issue because they turn off, conserving that battery life. But again, with the Gen 2 updated versions that we have here, they both come with AutoLive technology. So realistically, with the ACSS version, you're probably getting somewhere between 1 and 2 years of battery life, depending on use case, and somewhere between like 2 and 5 years on the 2 MOA dot version. Now, other than that, the only thing to talk about on the body of the optic is going to be the capped windage and elevation. They're fairly nice. I believe they're in half MOA increments, which is perfectly fine. They were set and forget. The knurling on the caps is just fine, and they're a little bit protected. The one thing that I don't like about them particularly much is that they do add quite a bit of size to the dots. Like I said, if you look at it straight on, it is a fairly bulky dot for, again, only being slightly larger than like your standard 20mm micro red dots. It does take up a lot more space in front of your eyeballs when it's on a rifle. Now, getting into glass quality, dot, emitter quality, those sorts of things, unfortunately, on both the 2 MOA dot and the ACSS CQB version, the glass quality is somewhat poor in terms of its appearance. It has a very, very noticeable blue-green notch filter, one of the most noticeable on the market. It is not terrible when you're using it by themselves. You probably won't notice it all that much, but that effect is going to be magnified, no pun intended, when you slap a 3x, 4x, 5x magnifier behind the optic. In fact, this is with the Holosun HM3X. I've also used it with the Vortex 3X micro magnifier, and you get a very, very gross looking bluish green image. It's not very attractive. It's not terribly hard to use, but it is, again, going to be one of the more noticeable blue-green notch filters. It's distracting. It's not pleasant to look at. Definitely still usable, but something you should be aware of. Now, fortunately, the 2 MOA dot is very crisp and the emitter quality is good. It has a very, very good refresh rate. You will not notice any sort of flashing or anything like that. The dot itself is very crisp, very precise, one of the better 2 MOA dots on the market, so I can praise it for that. It was very easy to zero and to do the drop testing with them, which we will get into later on. So as far as the 2 MOA dot version goes, the dot is very crisp, the emitter quality is very good, no complaints there. Now, the main one that you guys are probably interested in is the ACSS CQB reticle, because it is the most versatile red dot and probably the best reticle you can get in a red dot that's not the SIG Romeo 8T. Now, what you have here is you have ACSS CQB, so you have a center chevron, an outer horseshoe, and you have your holds for, I believe, 4, 5, and 600 yards, depending on your caliber, barrel length, so on and so forth. How those actually line up is going to take some working out on your end. Now, as far as the design of the reticle goes, I don't have any complaints with that whatsoever. I think the design is simple enough while giving you enough information, very good for CQB as intended, and also will give you reference points for those extended distances. All good there. The problem here is going to be the execution. So right now, the chevron, the dots, the horseshoe all look pretty good. However, under magnification, if you don't have that diopter set just right with just the right conditions, the whole reticle looks very, very blurry. I could not get it to look nice and crisp. No matter what I tried to do with multiple magnifiers, it just does not look very good under magnification, which kind of ruins the whole point of having that very nice fine tip of the chevron for a very fine aiming point, and then the BDC drops. If they're all kind of smushed and elongated when you get them under magnification, it's not particularly useful. So while in theory that reticle should be very good and should be a desirable feature to have, unfortunately in execution, it just doesn't look very good in at least the situations that I've put it in. And again, this could be an issue with this specific optic. However, this was again sent out to me by them, and it did come with a complete checklist of everybody that went through it. So as far as I know, this optic is good to go. Could also just be my eyes. Hopefully I'm showing you guys tons of footage of it unmagnified and magnified with different magnifiers. But again, depending on your settings, maybe you can get it to look better. But for my eyes and my mileage, I couldn't get the reticle to look good. In fact, I would go so far as to say the 2 MOA dot version was actually more precise, easy to zero, easier to do drop testing with and get a more consistent point of aim than with the ACSS CQB reticle, which is again supposed to be better and on paper is absolutely better. Unfortunately, something to do with it, could again just be my eyes, my specific setup, just doesn't look very good, which kind of ruins the whole point of having that very nice reticle. Now, getting into one of the areas where both of these optics did very well is going to be the durability / drop testing. So as most of you know, I do a double drop test on most of my optics. one from shoulder height onto dirt and rocks as kind of like a hard hit, but not the hardest hit possible, and then a final drop onto an AR500 steel plate. If you're a prism optic or a LPVO, you generally die at that stage. If you're a red dot, you generally survive with a shift in 0. Now, both the 2MOA dot version here and the ACSS CQB version were dropped in the exact same way, and they both came out with basically the exact same result, which is nice to see from my side. So we, of course, start out with a 5-round control group from 36 yards, which is generally where I zero my red dots. Not all the time, but generally. Then we do a shoulder height drop on the top of the optic from shoulder height onto, again, dirt and rocks, and do another 5-round group. Fortunately, both the ACSS CQB version and the 2MOA dot version here perform perfectly with basically no noticeable shift in 0. Then the final drop is again from shoulder height onto an AR500 steel plate, and we experienced about 1-inch shift in terms of point of aim, point of impact, which is about 3 MOA. Keep in mind that we're only at 36 yards. Now, 3 MOA inside of 100 yards, not that big of a deal. Where that is really going to start to matter is smaller targets out to extended distances. Even a large target at 400 or 500 yards, you're going to be way off target with a 3 MOA point of impact shift. And if you're shooting at a smaller, reduced size target at extended distances, you're going to be way off. Now, that is, of course, not perfect. We would like to see no point of aim, no point of impact shift. However, 3 MOA seems to kind of be about the standard for most decent red dots with decent mounts. There's going to be some shift in 0, but not much, and the optic is going to survive in most cases. This one here did take a beating. The top windage cap, or the top elevation cap, is dented in and difficult to get off, and the front end kind of shredded a little bit, but other than that, still perfectly usable. Now, if we haven't talked about these from a value perspective yet, I believe the CQB version goes for around $200. I believe it's on pre-order or back order as of right now, and the 2MOA dot version comes in just below that. So there's still definitely value on that budget side of red dots. However, they're not really going to compete in the same category as your Sig Romeo 5s, Vortex, Holosun, so on and so forth, in that $100 to $120 price category. Now, while these do, of course, have larger windows, which is a preference, a selling point for some people, myself included, I do tend to like larger windows. These also have much more obstructive, bulky bodies as well. So while you can see more through the optics, you're also losing some of that vision around the optics, whereas a 20mm micro red dot, like let's say the Sig Romeo 5, you'll see less through the optic, but you'll see more around the optic. So there is a definite trade-off there, whether you prefer one or the other. In terms of value, I think if the ACSS CQB reticle was very sharp and crisp, and maybe yours is, maybe this is just an issue with this optic, I think that they could be a very good value. If you want that reticle, it is going to give you more distance capability, certainly much more than just a 2MOA dot and holding in a prayer, basically. The AutoLive or the auto on, auto off being added to the optics is an excellent addition. Overall, I do think that they're a decent value. They're not perfect optics. They do, of course, have drawbacks. I would love for the ACSS CQB reticle to look perfect. Otherwise, this would be a fairly glowing review. Still not a perfect optic, but very good for the money, and that reticle is very capable. Again, if the execution was just a little bit better. So, with all that out of the way, guys, let me know what you guys think of the SLX MD25 Gen 2s from Primary Arms, both the 2MOA dot version, which I really don't have any complaints about other than, it is a little bigger and bulkier than some other optics, and of course the ACSS CQB option, which is more preferable because of that kind of enhanced reticle. So, with all that out of the way, guys, though, I do want to say thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. I will see you in the next one. Peace out. While falling, damn it.